This is Dream Power Radio, the place where your dreams turn into reality. Here is your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman.
Hello, and welcome to Dream Power Radio. This is the place where we talk about dreams, both daytime and nighttime dreams, and how you can use them to make the internal shift to a life you love and rediscover the truth of who you really are. It seems that I have families on my mind lately. In a recent episode, we focused on the concept of family dreaming, that it's possible that family members can have similar dreams about similar subjects at the same time. But that's not all families have in common. Of course, there are the physical traits that are passed down from generation to generation, but there are also behaviors that we inherit. This can be referred to as our emotional DNA. The thing is, most of us don't realize that the reason we act and react the way we do is because of events that might have happened way before we were born. Well, one person who has studied this, and in fact is an expert on family dynamics, is my guest, Judy Wilkins-Smith, who's making a return appearance to Dream Power Radio. Judy works with individuals and companies to analyze these patterns in order to break the cycles when they result in negative or destructive behaviors. She's also the author of a number of books, including the upcoming Decoding Your Emotional Blueprint, a powerful guide to transformation through disentangling multigenerational patterns. Welcome back to Dream Power Radio, Judy.
It is so nice to be back with you.
Oh, and like I said, I must have families on my mind because this is the second program in recent history that I'm talking about families. But Judy, I think that most people never stop to think that the way they behave is a result of patterns started by their ancestors. How did we figure this out in the first place?
How we figured it out was starting to listen to what people were saying and watch their actions and reactions. We noticed that people would say, you look just like your Uncle Harry, or you behave just like your grandmother. And somebody began paying attention to that. What is it that I'm like? If somebody says to you, you're like so-and-so, pay attention and ask them, what do you mean? Because often what they're referring to is that you've inherited or taken on patterns of thoughts, feelings, actions, and reactions. And now you're living those as though they were yours. But actually what you're doing is reliving ancient history. You're not fully present, and you're certainly not creating an authentic future.
And I bet when people say, you remind me of so-and-so, it's usually probably a negative behavior that they do.
Unfortunately, yes. However, the beauty of the negative behavior is that it's a limiting behavior that cycled down to you. And the beauty of that is it's in your hands so that you can reframe it using the gift that was always there that hasn't been seen and turn it into a strength. So anytime somebody says that to you, they're giving you a piece of gold. Pay attention.
That is valuable advice because most of the time we don't pay attention to these.
No, we get annoyed.
Can you give me some other examples of these kind of traits that get passed down?
Sure. Well, patterns of thoughts about money, relationships, leadership, career. We were all lawyers. By goodness, you're going to be a lawyer too. I am stunned by the money DNA that we inherit. So many of us have either money or love, either money or career. Either we put everything against money and then we wonder why we're struggling with it. We don't realize that money is a friend and a potent force, and in fact, a very spiritual force. And so we begin to put the one against the other. And so let's suppose that in the Great Depression, great-grandfather lost everything. And he said to his kids, you work your whole life and then everything gets taken away from you. The next thing we know, that passes down to grandfather who says, I'm not going to work that hard. And when I make money, I'm not keeping the money because you know what, it's going to go anyway. Well, we cycle down to dad and dad's going, easy come, easy go. It comes, it goes, it comes, it goes. And then we get to you and you go, but I don't like this. I would really like to have nice things. I would like to enjoy money. Why does it have to be either money or? Why can't I enjoy it? And suddenly we find somebody who becomes a very good steward of money. very kind to money, very good with their use of it, and they have now just changed the emotional DNA for them and for their children. When they can acknowledge what set it off, which was great grandfather, and say, that was your loss, it's not mine, we can begin a pattern of assimilation, of enjoyment, and something completely different.
So this kind of explains why we see families who were generation to generation stuck in a place maybe where they haven't had money, or stuck in a place where they're always going through divorces and
Exactly. The divorces is a classic one. Yeah. Grandmother got divorced, mother got divorced. Oh, well, that's what you do. You marry the guy and then you divorce him. So, yes.
So let me ask you a question. But so you're saying these are passed down traits. Does it work like physical traits that are passed down? For example, I may have brown hair and maybe my sister has blonde hair because they both run in the family and they've gotten passed down.
Right.
So do the emotional traits get passed down like that, where I may feel it, but my sister doesn't?
Absolutely, because it depends on which part of the system you're sensing into. But if you're very close to mom and that's the way mom thought, well, that's the way you're going to think. Conversely, you're not so close to mom and she's not good with money and you go, I'm not doing that. And in a way, mom has just given you a gift too. She's given you the gift of do it differently. So anytime we think that our parents or the people around us are not very nice or they're jerks or we reject them, be careful, because gifts that we give to our children or that are given to us don't always come in a pretty pink parcel with a nice sparkly bow. Sometimes it's don't do what I did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's always like, I always used to say that about parenting. I said, I made mistakes as a parent. I said, well, don't do what I did.
Exactly. And that's very sound advice, because you, by saying that, are already beginning to change that emotional DNA. I thought this. I don't think that, because you're going to lock yourself into a very unkind truth. Don't feel that, because you're not going to feel good. So you really are also guiding that next generation when you say that, if they would pay attention.
Yeah, if they would pay attention is the hard part, because most of the time it just, mom said that, who cares?
Exactly. Until a little bit further down the line, somebody says, you're just like your mom, and they go, oh no. Oh yes.
And then they start to pay attention.
Absolutely. What was that? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in science, there was always been this great debate versus nature versus nurture. So how can we identify these patterns, and how do they know that they come from our families and not from the environment that we are living in or our culture?
So there are two things. Many times people don't have access to their family genealogy, so they don't know if it came from them. But if you look at your own life and you look at the patterns and the events that began them, that's where you begin to identify this. The event that began it and what you were doing at that time in your life. Then you want to sit down and write down everything that you said about it or thought about it, felt about it, and did around it. And you'll start identifying the patterns that you've created, because together those form a very potent piece. If you believe strongly enough in what you're telling yourself and your feelings agree with that, and your actions align with that, it becomes the truth. Only it's not the truth, it's just your truth, and you can change that anytime you want to.
Yeah, that's an important point, because I think people think that they can't change.
Oh, they can. And neuroscience tells us this. Neuroscience tells you one new thought, one new feeling, one new action that you buy into, and you are rewiring your brain. And of course, you can.
Hmm. How do you get people to understand that? Because so many people just will be adamant about, no, this is the way I am. And
I would say if somebody says, this is the way I am, I would ask them, is this only the way you are, or is this the way your system is? And what is the cost and what is the benefit? You can always take the benefit, but are you sure you want to get saddled with a cost?
that's the point that really has to be made clear, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah. You also talk about the concept of family constellation. So can you explain more about what that is and what you mean by it?
Sure. So I'm going to broaden it just a little bit because I work with systemic work and constellations, and constellations can be organizational constellations. If we lock into family constellations, your primary pattern maker is your family. So that's the one we look at first to discover where did your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors come from. And what we do is a unique piece where we dimensionalize the family. So either using inanimate objects like pieces of paper that are very specially constructed, or live representatives, we set those in a relationship to each other. So you might say, if I said to you, okay, Debbie, give me a picture of your mom, your dad, your siblings, yourself. You might put dad sort of leaning out of the circle. You might put mom in the center. You might put yourself right next to mom or between mom and dad. You might put siblings somewhere else. It gives us an immediate picture of what is going on in the system. But more than that, it also uses multiple senses to explore what's happening. So you are now seeing it, feeling it, touching it, walking it, talking it. And because you can do that and because you can walk through it and dimensionalize it, you're having insights you never had before. You're having thoughts and feelings you never had before. And it becomes a very strong embodied experience. And indeed, most times it becomes that aha experience that we talk about. And it's a double aha. It goes, aha, I'm not trapped in this pattern.
That's very interesting. And, it's also interesting to me that you talk about drawing this out. So it's actually turns out into a diagram, because that's actually something that we could do with our dreams as well. We're trying to understand them. When we draw it out, we see patterns and we see relationships.
Exactly. And in this, you're not just drawing it out, you're physically placing each piece on the floor so that you can walk on it or walk through it or look at it from different angles. It's a very different experience when you incorporate all of your senses.
That is fascinating. In fact, another fascinating thing is that the movie Encanto specifically mentions family constellations. So were they onto this?
3 times. Oh yeah, I'm actually going to do a TikTok, or I'm busy doing a TikTok series on Encanto because it is a family constellation. It talks about all the different kinds of people or characters in the constellation. She actually does a constellation with Abuela right near the end, where the two come together and she says to her, I see you, and now I understand. It is beautifully and brilliantly done. She also has all the pieces of the puzzle. And at one stage, when they sing that very famous We Don't Talk About Bruno, as it's winding down, all of the pieces are clicking in, and she's starting to see what belongs where and how it serves the whole picture, because every piece does, whether it seems to be good, bad, strong, silent, whatever it is. And she also touches on the very important piece of exclusion. Until Bruno is brought back and until she is brought back into the ways of the family can't go forward. And the youngest member of the family actually says to her, come with me. I can't do it without you. And this is fundamental to this work. So Encanto has been exceptionally exciting. If you want to see what family constellations work is, that's a very, very good depiction.
Oh, that is excellent advice. And on that note, we're going to take a short break. We are talking about family patterns with Judy Wilkins-Smith, and we'll be right back. If you're not pleased with the trajectory of your life, the time to begin your own personal transformation is now, and your dreams can help pave the way. How? By tapping into your unvoiced confidence. What is unvoiced confidence, you say? It's the acceptance of your abilities and qualities. It's a state of mind coming from liking and even loving yourself, and feeling free to say or do anything you want without concern for the judgment of others. You were born confident, but may have had it chipped away little by little by the negative self-beliefs you've picked up over the years. If you're looking for the heightened energy, clarity of thought, and the feeling of being more alive that comes from self-confidence, you can rediscover it by paying attention to your dreams. Need some help doing this? Go to my website, thedreamcoach.net, and sign up for my complimentary dream discovery session. I can help show you how your dreams can help you return to the confident person you were always meant to be. Again, go to thedreamcoach.net. Thedreamcoach.net.
Welcome back to Dream Power Radio with your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman.
Yes, welcome back to Dream Power Radio. I'm your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman, and we're talking about family patterns with Judy Wilkins-Smith. Well, Judy, we were talking about the constellations and how Encanto sort of brought this to the mainstream and introduced everybody to about it. But can you give me an example of a hypothetical family and how this will work in practice?
Okay, so here's one of my favorites. So I have a client who comes to me who says, I'm struggling. I don't feel worthy. My mother never sees me. Doesn't matter what I do, mom just isn't present to me. So I say to her, tell me about her mom. And she says, well, her mom was a bit distant too, now that I come to think of it. Very nice person, but just distant. And great-grandmother? Well, great-grandmother is the big tragedy, because great-grandmother was a fabulous housekeeper and mom and this gorgeous person. Great-grandfather got killed, and great-grandmother suddenly had to put food on the table for 6 kids. And that was the end of that lovely, easygoing, happy great-grandmother. After that, she was always working. And so the kids had to raise themselves. And so I said to her, so it's all about you. Yes. Not so much, right? If you go all the way back, it's really all about great-grandmother who had to give up being happy and engaged in order to be committed and put food on the table. Oh. And grandmother was raising the kids, so she didn't have time to do much other than look at the kids, and she got divorced, so same thing happens to her. She has to put food on the table. So do you see that there's a pattern of not much fun, put food on the table, we don't have time to be with the kids? And your mom? Yeah, she got divorced too. So now we've got the pattern of divorce. Mom also as a single mom has to put food on the table. She was a great mom, but she just never saw me. Do you understand why? Yes, got it. I see where it comes from. So do you understand it's got nothing to do with your worthiness? She's looking for her mom to see her, who's looking for her mom to see her. Oh, so it's not about me, it's about all the women. Yes. Do you understand that for the first time in 4 generations, you could be a mom who sees her daughter? Oh, are you still married? Yes, but I've been feeling restless. Yeah, you're feeling the restlessness of the women because they know what the pattern is. But you could decide to do it differently. I could? Yeah, you really could. What does that feel like? Very different. I'd suddenly feel like I don't have a burden on my shoulders. And I feel like I'd like to spend more time with my daughter. So again, for the first time in 4 generations, a mother can look at her daughter, and a daughter can be seen by her mother, and a woman can stay with a man. And so what I would do is set them all up so that she could see the line of women and explain that, and then show her that she's the one to do it differently. Because when she does, she no longer repeats that ancient history and that old emotional DNA of you can't rely on a man, men disappear, it's all on the women. Suddenly a man can come into the system and stay. And suddenly she can see her child, and her child has a completely different future.
So let's say in this example, the woman has this revelation. How does she make it stick? Because very often, our ego will get in the way, or events will happen, to trigger her to react in the way that she's
Right.
used to reacting. So how does she make that a lasting change?
Okay, so there are a couple of things. First of all, in the constellation, if I line the women up, which is what I might do, and I have them all put their hands on each other's shoulder, and then their hands at her back, and I ask them to breathe through and push her forward and tell her, do it differently. This is often a very powerful piece that sticks with them. And then I ask her, what will you give your daughter? That is another very powerful piece. And then I may bring a representative for a man in and say to her, can you look at him and tell him, now you have a chance. Now we can welcome men in. And with that, it's often such a visceral, embodied experience that there is a shift in the moment. And then I will say to them, I want you to keep remembering, get a picture of great grandma, get a picture of grandma, get a picture of your mom, and then get a picture of yourself. And every day, look at those other three and tell them, watch me, I'm doing it differently.
And so that then creates the new pattern.
That creates the new pattern. And I will ask her, I want you to write down for yourself, what is one new thought you can have about this? What is one new feeling? Gosh, my mom might not have had the time, but she gave me good stuff. And now I can give my daughter time, and I can give my daughter my eyes and my attention. So what is that need? So that's a new thought. What is the feeling? Wow, I can really be here. It feels light. It feels happy. What is the new action? Daughter and I are going to do once a week. It's mommy and daughter. We're going to go down to the gym and do that thing together, or we're going to go, I don't care where, but make time for mommy and daughter, and then mommy and daddy and daughter, so that you learn how to be what the others could not.
Mm-hmm. And I bet that going through this process also makes the person have a newfound love and appreciation for the ancestors.
Absolutely. You hit on something that's super important. The person who looked like the villain often becomes a hero when we look at it properly. We see the sacrifices they made or the steps they took. And each generation has taken a succession of steps. And now it's your turn. You are standing on their shoulders. You want to acknowledge that with profound gratitude, no matter which way it came to you, because it gave you your own unique adventure that you call your life.
It is something. Well, let's say that this hypothetical woman, who's going through this, sees this and starts to make changes, but she has siblings and they don't understand it, or her relationship with them goes through a change because of what she now knows. How does she handle that?
Okay, so the first thing I tell people is, for goodness sake, when you have this experience, because it is a profound experience, please don't go verbally vomit over everybody else. It's not a good idea. It comes about with you focusing on you, not everybody else. I have had many people at my events who say, well, this is nice, but my family is never going to go for it. And I said to them, it's not about your family. This is about you. You do you. And the more you model you and the way you are, the more it will just one person at a time. The minute she changes her relationship with the rest of the family, they can no longer react the same way. And I've had people who will come in and tell me, yeah, my family will never do this. And then 2 years later, they say, my family's all done it now, because they watched, they noticed, they saw me getting happy and fulfilled, and they went, I know what she's eating, but I want some.
Well, because it must be an incredibly wonderful experience to realize that, yes, you may have to work hard to put food on the table, but you could also be happy because you understand everything that's gone into it and appreciate.
Yes, and interesting though that you say that, because often the message that comes down is you have to work hard to put food on the table. Says who? That was then. You may not have to work that hard. I've had people who say, I'm getting really well paid, but I don't think I'm working hard enough. Put it down. They worked hard so you could work smart. They worked hard so that you could do it very differently. You do not have to work hard because they did.
That's actually something to consider, because again, sort of a language, I said that because it came out working hard, but
yeah,
it is in the perception.
It's totally in the perception.
Because you may be working smart, but tell yourself it's hard.
Yeah, I had a gentleman who told me he was very worried. He made 7 figures, but he was very worried. He thought he should get another job. And I said, why? Well, but he said, because I've got this time over the weekends and I should do another job. My father did and my grandfather did. I said, did they earn what you did? No, but they equipped me to go to college. Yes, so that you wouldn't have to do two jobs. Oh, so we don't put those pieces together.
But once we do, miracles happen.
Absolutely.
This is true. So you talked about how the individuals have patterns and families have patterns.
Yes.
But you also say that companies have patterns. So
Yes, they
how do
do.
you work with companies with their emotional DNA?
So what I do is typically I'll give you an example. I walk in and they'll say to me, we have this position. It never stays filled. That position never lasts longer than 6 months and then they're gone. So what I want to know is who was the first person to occupy it and when did that 6 month pattern start? Well, so-and-so came and did this and he did really well, but then there was a bit of a goof and they blamed him and they kicked him out after 6 months. You've just created an emotional exclusion. And the minute you create an exclusion that is out of balance, it's going to keep resurfacing because now everybody who comes in is walking into a role that hasn't been vacated. It's not been offboarded, so they keep walking into the same energy, and after 6 months, they can't take it and they go. We have those. We also have things like Disney World. There is Disney DNA. And if you start messing around with things like Disney DNA or any company's DNA, you want to be careful. If you do a merger and acquisition, you're not just buying a company's assets, you're buying its DNA. You better be aware of what DNA lives in that company. What are the events that shape the emotional DNA that lives in that company? Because it's coming to a theater near you.
That's amazing because you'd never think that an inanimate object like a company is actually very alive.
Very alive, and so are the roles and positions and leaders as well. And if there is somebody who is significantly impacted, it impacts everyone. If you have a leader who is evicted, there is a fear of becoming a leader. You know what happens when you get to the top? They kick you out. So there are thoughts, feelings, and actions in companies as well.
That is fascinating. Well, Judy, how can people find out more about you and your work and your new book?
They can find out more about me and what I do at judywilkins-smith.com. And incidentally, they'll also find constellations meditations there. I created two very unique ones that'll take them through an entire constellation. And then the book is available at all good booksellers right now. It only drops June 6th, but it is available for pre-order now. And of course, it's Decoding Your Emotional Blueprint. And I wrote it so that every single person could do that in case they couldn't get to an event. They could still make it happen for themselves.
Oh, that is wonderful. Well, Judy, thank you so much for being on Dream Power Radio today.
Thank you. It is always a pleasure to be with you. I look forward to it.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, we've been speaking with systemic work and constellations expert, Judy Wilkins-Smith. I hope you've enjoyed today's program. If you have, please hit that subscribe button so you won't miss out on any future episodes. Until next time, this is Debbie Spector-Weissman saying, sweet dreams, everybody.
You've been listening to Dream Power Radio with your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman. For more information on Debbie or to sign up for her newsletter, go to dreampowerradio.com. This has been Dream Power Radio.